taught a lot about meditation, the heart of meditation, how to do it. But you know that sometimes people say, oh, Ajahn Brahm, he only teaches samatha meditation. He doesn't teach insight. So today I'm going to teach insight meditation to confound my critics. No, I'm not. I'm just going to do this just to show that how insight ties in with this path which we've been practicing here. The thing is that insight meditation became a very strong, highly marketed type of meditation from Burma. And it became just, people thought it was the only type of meditation, the best type of meditation, blah, blah, blah. And they even started looking at things like the Satipatthana Sutta as the only way to become enlightened. And many monks still translate it that way, which is, anyone who knows their Pali knows that that translation is very wrong. The word in Pali, ekayana, it does not mean the only path. Certainly it doesn't. It means a path which leads into one direction. It has to lead to enlightenment. But the only path to enlightenment, Ezo wat mago nati anyo dasanasa visuddhiha. It's, I think, verse 372 of the Dhammapada. This, the only path, there is no other for the purity of insight. That's in the Dhammapada, and it's very clear translation. And that refers to the eightfold path. Yes, that is the only way to enlightenment, not just insight, not just samadhi. Because sometimes people think, oh yeah, all you need to do is to get jhanas, you become enlightened. No, you need right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, the right effort, mindfulness, and also stillness. You need all factors of the Eightfold Path, because some people in the United States, especially, not the people who come here, you know, the crazy Westerners, they think, oh, all you need to be is mindful. You don't need right speech, you don't need right action, you can say whatever you like, you stupid idiot, as long as you're mindful. But obviously you need all factors of the Eightfold Path. Otherwise, the great compassionate Buddha, he would have taught a one-fold path, not an eightfold path, to make life easier for everyone. So it's all 8 factors, okay? Anyone who says this is important. Anyway, sometimes when you talk about Satipatthana, Satipatthana is insight. Is it? Who said so? Because if you look at the teachings of the Buddha, you'll find in Anapanasati Sutta, the 118th sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, there the Buddha said, one of the best ways of fulfilling and completing the first Satipatthana, you know, the awareness of the body, mindfulness of the body, is to complete the first 4 steps of Anapanasati. Being aware of the breath going in, long or short, that's the first 2 steps. Calming that breath and just so realizing the breath and calming that bodily formation of the breath. That is what we do when we do our meditation on the breath. You're watching the breath and then you calm it down. Those are the first 4 stages of Anapanasati. I haven't taught them in the same 4 stages. I've actually lumped a few stages together when I told that simile of the opening the lotus. But it's, you know, establishing your mindfulness, present moment, silence, becoming aware of the breath, calming the breath down. That completes the first Satipatthana according to the Anapanasati Sutta. And then the next 4 stages of Anapanasati, that completes the second Satipatthana of Vedanasati, being aware of your feelings. Because after 5th and 6th, 7th and 8th stages of Anapanasati Sutta, is you breathe in and out experiencing piti, experiencing sukha. That's a delightful breath when you're having good time. It's just so nice watching the breath. And then you calm that chitta sankhara, the feeling, the emotions, you calm it down, make it very, very peaceful. Experiencing the whole chitta sankhara, calming it down. That's the 7th and 8th stage. And the Buddha said, just experience that. When you start to experience the happiness of meditation, the delightful breath, that completes the 2nd Satipatthana. And then, the next 4 stages of Satipatthana, experiencing the citta, brightening up that citta, abhipamojayang cittang, samadhahang cittang, keeping that citta still, and then releasing the citta. That citta there is that nimitta, that light. That took me a while to realize that, because you had this light coming up. What was it? It happens when the 5 senses vanish. It is the 6th sense, the mind. How it appears to human beings is usually a beautiful light in the mind. That's experiencing your citta. And I should say that sometimes when you're experiencing that light in the mind, the nimitta stage, sometimes that light is dull. It's not bright. Why? Because you're dull. That's why. Sometimes it's dirty. Why is that? Because you haven't been keeping your precepts. When I first told that, I always remember one of these men from Malaysia who always comes on the retreat. He came to me at interview time very concerned. He said, I saw my nimitta, and my goodness, it really needed a wash. So what have you been doing? Yes, Ajahn Brahm, I confess. Because when you see your mind at that stage, you can't deceive yourself. If it's bright and pure, that means well done. You've been keeping precepts, you've been a good person. If it's no stained or dirty, you've broken some precept somewhere. You can't avoid that. You can't ignore it. So this is actually your mind, you see. This is when you can start doing the 3rd Satipatthana. And then when you do the reflections, the last 4 stages of Anapana, contemplating, giving things away, renunciation, seeing anicca, and seeing the things fade away, and seeing, that's viraga, and seeing things cease. That's actually what you contemplate when you emerge from these deep meditations. So what the Buddha was saying, Anapanasati is Satipatthana. So what you've been doing here is a Satipatthana retreat. And sometimes I think, hey, I thought to do a Satipatthana retreat you have to note. And I can't resist telling the story, which most of you have heard before, but it's one of my favourite ones. It's very cheeky and very naughty, but that's my nature. About the woman who came to the temple one evening, and she was one of these very wealthy women from Singapore. She lived in a mansion with a guard at the gate. And she told the guard, I'm going to the temple this evening to listen to Ajahn Brahm. But there are burglars around this area. Other houses have been robbed. God, I want you to be very mindful of burglars. Okay, and so she went to the temple. She listened to a nice talk. And when she came home, she found her house had been robbed. All her valuables had gone. So she asked the guard, look, what happened? I told you to be mindful. And the guard said, Madam, I was mindful. I saw the burglars going in. And I noted, burglar going in, burglar going in, burglar going in. I saw them taking your jewellery out. I noted jewellery going out, jewellery going out, jewellery going out. I saw them going in again. Burglar going back in, burglar going back in. I saw them taking your safe out, safe going out. I was mindful all the time, perfectly mindful, madam. It's very cheeky because that's not what people do, but sometimes that's what people think is mindfulness meditation. So it's not. So the path you're doing here is a path of insight. It's a whole eightfold path, all lumped together as a path. Because you will find that if you just say, I'm going to be mindful, can you do it? You can't do it. You have to nurture it, develop it, allow it to grow. You can't just say, I'm going to be mindful and do it through force. During this retreat, I hopefully You've had moments of peace and calm where you've also noticed you are very mindful. And also the other thing, you're happy too. Because those things always come together. Stillness, mindfulness, happiness come together. There are times when you'll be sitting here just so happy and someone bangs the door and it's really loud. Your mindfulness is getting stronger. After a great meditation in the morning, you eat that breakfast and my goodness, it's delicious. Why is that? Nothing to do with the food, everything to do with your mind being very pure and clean so you can see and taste so much more. You're becoming mindful. You can see people going back to their rooms, smiling and happy. And it's not because of my jokes. My jokes are terrible. It's everything to do with the fact that you're mindful, energized, you're starting to get happy. So this is a sign that mindfulness is actually increasing. And as you become more mindful, more aware, you can see more deeply, you can feel more deeply, then you can get some insights. You've got to sort of clean your glasses before you can see. And that's what this meditation is doing. It's cleaning your mind from the hindrances, from these grease and spots on your glasses which stop you seeing clearly. Once that grease and spots are taken off, then you can see. So once these hindrances are let go of, that's when insight happens. And to let go of those hindrances, what are those hindrances anyway? The first one, desire, wanting. How can you get rid of wanting? By wanting to get rid of wanting. That's more wanting. I want to get rid of wanting, but I also want to get rid of the wanting to get rid of the wanting. And I want to get rid of the wanting to get rid of the wanting to get rid of the wanting. And you get really confused. So just give up, let go. Make peace, be kind, be gentle. Ill will. That person who banged the door this morning. I was just about to get into jhana and bang! Oh! That's ill will. How do you get rid of ill will? You're making peace, being kind, being gentle. It's only bang and it disappears. Don't let it echo in your mind. It went bang, it went bang, it went bang. I'm going to kill that guy, I'm going to find out who he is. Bang. That's the noise. So that's ill will. Ill will makes more noise in your head than any retreatant. So don't blame the person who decides to have a cup of tea at 1 o'clock in the morning and boils that kettle. Don't blame them. Blame your own ill will. That's what keeps you awake. So, how do you get rid of ill will? Make peace, be kind, be gentle. Sloth and torpor. How do you get rid of sloth and torpor? I taught you how to get rid of sloth and torpor the first few days. Sleep a lot. But now you should have your energy. That's the physical part of it. Now the mental part of it. Put some joy into your meditation. Have fun. I noticed when I first started giving talks, I was very serious. I noticed people walk out the door, fall asleep. These days they would just SMS while you're giving the talk. They weren't paying attention. And sometimes they fell asleep, they were dull. So how do I stop that? Put joy and energy into the talks. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. That gets rid of sloth and torpor. Making people laugh, giving them energy, that gets rid of sloth and torpor. It's just the joy and the happiness of a meditation retreat. That gets rid of that hindrance. So you feel alive, awake. And of course, the biggest joy from stillness. And what's the next one? Restlessness. We talked a lot about restlessness here. If you try and get rid of restlessness, remember that story of when I was 6 Rains retreat, had all these sexual fantasies, dreams of girlfriends, and I just tried to stop that I couldn't. And when I let it be, it stopped by itself. I remember Ajahn Chah's simile, which I think I gave the first day. A leaf on a tree, it waves only because of the wind. It's not the leaf's fault, it's the wind's fault. So how can you stop the leaf on a tree sort of moving? Just protect it from the wind. And it moves less and less and less until it becomes perfectly still. So what do we mean by that? Your mind is that leaf, the wind is wanting. Wanting to get jhanas, wanting to have something to drink, wanting to kill somebody, wanting to... whatever it is you want to do, that causes restlessness. Contentment, happy to be here, this is good enough. Yeah, I make noise sometimes, you make noise sometimes, we all make noise. Let's give each other a break. And that means we don't want anything. We've got this beautiful sense of acceptance and peace. And your mind gets very still because no wanting. And of course, doubt. I can teach. Other monks and nuns can teach. And they can explain things so well. Have you heard that before? One teacher comes here one week and it teaches this method, and another one teaches the next method, and someone else teaches something else. It's really confusing, isn't it? Who should I follow? But the only way to really overcome doubt is through experience. To try and take you to a state of stillness and peace and joy. You know it for yourself. And then you realize this is actually true. That's why that if you eat the menus, you will always have doubts. You don't know which menu is correct. But when you eat the food, then all your doubts will be disappeared. You have to bring people to experience of the truth. Experience of peace and stillness and happiness and joy. When they have that experience, their doubts disappear. I can't resist telling my classic story about doubt, about the man who was lost in the desert, because this is how the Buddha described the doubt. It was a simile of someone being lost in the desert. With no signpost, no GPS, they don't know which way to go. And this poor man was lost in the desert for days, dehydrated, sort of sunstroke, hallucinating, and maybe an hour or two to live. And as he was crawling in the hot desert, he thought he saw something in the distance coming his way. First thought it was just a mirage. But as it came closer, he could make out details. It looked like a dog sled. And he thought, no, this can't be true. But as it came even closer, sure enough, it was. A pack of 6 husky dogs carrying a sled with an Eskimo on the back. And he thought, I'm going crazy, I'm going mad. But when the sled came right up to him and the dog started licking his face and the man started talking to him, he realized this was not a mirage after all. He said, oh, thank goodness I've been saved. I've been lost in this desert for days. And the Eskimo replied, and you think you're lost. Okay. Now I've got rid of your sloth and torpor. So when we get rid of the hindrances, then we can actually have insight, we can actually see things. So that's what we're trying to do, to get you to be peaceful and calm, so you can start to see things and understand what's going on. But it's not just having a clear mind so you can see deeply into things, because remember, it's very easy for people to have some wisdom about the world, but to be enlightened, you've got to have very, very deep wisdom. And this is one of the exercises I do to show you what deep wisdom is. I hold up whatever's close to me and I say, what is this? Okay, what is this? Who knows what this is?
It's a mug.
Cup, mug, yeah. What else can you tell me about this thing I'm holding up?
Painted.
Painted, yeah. Anything else?
Glazed.
Glazed, yeah.
There's water inside.
Water inside, yeah. What else? Blue and white, yeah. Anything else? Now I do this exercise because I want you to exhaust all the descriptions you have of this object in front of me. Because so often people look at something, they say cup or mug, and they think now they've understood everything about it, and they stop looking further. So they never really penetrate into what this is. Yeah, it is a mug or a cup because that's what you've been taught at school. Remember that first grade at school? Mummy, daddy, tree, dog, house. You've learned how to give things labels, and you think that's what they are. This is a cup. Okay, I've known that. Now I can go on to something else. In this little exercise, I hold something up and ask you to keep looking at it until you've exhausted all the names you can say about this. And then maybe you can see something deeper inside. All you're learning are the names. The insight is what happens when all those names are left behind. And you start to see this. This is not a mug. It's not a cup. It's much, much more than that. So you see me, Ajahn Brahm, monk. Is that all I am? Of course not. It's unfathomable, all the stuff which is in here. Do you think you could ever know me? And you've seen me so many times. How about your wife? Do you know your wife? You've lived with her for so many years. You know her name, you know all her idiosyncrasies, the way she snores at night when she sleeps, whatever else it is. But do you really know her? Of course you don't. Sometimes that's what happens when we fall in love. We think, I know everything about her and everything I see is beautiful. When you're about to get divorced, she's a terrible girl. Why did I ever marry her? Which is the true one? Trouble is, we always think we know, and that is a cause of delusion. And that's other people. What about knowing yourself? Do you really know who you are? I was given a name when I was baptized. I was baptized as a Christian, but I don't count that because they didn't ask my permission. I was only about 2 months at the time. That was involuntary. And then I changed my name from Peter Betts to Bhikkhu Brahma Wangso. And now people know me as Ajahn Brahm, which is the real me. And when I have workers here, doing some work for the Jhana Grove or Bodhinyana Monastery, they don't call me Ajahn Brahm, they call me Brahm. How you going, Brahm? So which one is the real me? Am I a man? In Thai, they used to have the 3 genders. Male, female, amongst nuns. Samana pet. So I really like that because we were outside, we weren't male, we weren't female, we were monks. That's why I was very disappointed at Thai airports they didn't have 3 toilets. Male, female, and monks. It's very confusing being a monk, especially when you go to foreign countries. And sometimes in foreign countries they refuse to put things in English. They could have in Arab letters or Chinese letters. So I go to the toilet there, there's squiggles on the door. I've got to work out which one is male, which one is female. So I look at the little figure on the outside, and I look at me. So I won't go further with that one. But when you start to contemplate things, who are you? Am I English? I associate more with Australia or even Asia these days than England. Every time I go back, I go to a foreign country, even though I grew up there. So actually, what is your nationality? This is what happens these days. We get maybe born in one city, we go to university in another city, we sort of marry people from another country, we live somewhere else on business. And sometimes it's very hard for us to associate with being a citizen of even one country. We don't have that. And I have that so often. When I go to a place and all your friends are at the airport welcome you, it's like, welcome home, Ajahn Brahm. And I went to this conference. I think it was a United Nations WASAC conference. And I'm not quite sure why, but I live in Australia, but they had me down as part of the Singapore delegation. But I was sitting with the Australians. And when I came out, all the Malaysians were out there with the Malaysian flag, about to take their group photographs. Ajahn Brahm, you come in here. But I'm not quite sure, Australia or Singapore I'm supposed to be representing. No, come on, you're one of us. So in that delegation, that conference, I was representing Australia, Singapore, and photographed in the Malaysian delegation as well. I really liked that. That's really good. Because you've got friends everywhere, so where do you belong? And I don't know how many times when I've gone to Singapore and the BF said, welcome home, Ajahn Brahm. They want to grab me and keep me there. And when I go to Penang, welcome home, Ajahn Brahm, you stay here. And when all the people who live here hear that, they won't let me go again. So this is your home. So, who am I? That's one of the most important questions to answer. So, not only do you have to get rid of the defilements, the hindrances to be able to see clearly, you also need to gather more data to find out who you really are. So that's why we do this wonderful part of meditation, where everything starts to disappear. Everything we thought we were vanishes. Cup, mug, no, it's more than that. Blue, glazed, white, pictures of fish on the outside, no, it's much more than that. So you have to go deep inside of yourself. Are you a nun? Are you a monk? That's just on the outside. What's on the inside? So the only way to find out what's in the inside is using the simile of the emperor. Again, these are similes which I've made up. If I find a better one, then I'll change it. Until that time, you're stuck with the same similes every retreat. The emperor. Once there was an emperor who was very, very powerful. But no one knew if it was a male or a female. So I didn't say him or her. No one knew if they was old or young. They didn't even know whether it was from Singapore, Malaysia, whether it was an Angmo, a Kwailo, or African or Eskimo or whatever. They just didn't know. Because every time the emperor appeared in public, the emperor was dressed in 5 pieces of clothing. He had, or it, or whatever it was, had boots which covered its feet, up past its knees, up to its thighs. Like some girls wear these days. What are they called? No, not mini skirts, these are boots. Now we know what she wears. Big boots coming up to your thighs. And had a skirt, no, not a skirt, had like trousers or something, which covered the top of its boots. And also came up to his waist, or its waist. Had a jacket which covered the top of the trousers, went right up to the neck, and with sleeves which went to the wrists. And overlapping the sleeves of this jacket, the emperor wore gloves, these big long gloves. And lastly, the emperor wore a helmet which covered the whole head until it was just covering the top of his jacket. Just like that Darth Vader in Star Wars. No one knew what was actually inside. And it was totally covered by the 5 garments. The boots, the trousers, the jacket, the gloves, and the helmet. So no one knew what was inside. They didn't know what the emperor was, old, young, female, male, whether it was some cyborg, computer-driven. I didn't know what it was. And the only way to find out was to take those clothes off and find out what was underneath. In this simile, the emperor is you. You're so powerful, you control your whole life, creating happiness and suffering. And the 5 pieces of clothing are the 5 senses of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. And they cover up this thing inside which is controlling everything. So the job to find out who this emperor is, who are you, is to take off those 5 pieces of clothes. Take off the sight, the hearing, the smelling, tasting, touching, and see what's left. And that is exactly what you've been doing here. Meditating, closing your eyes, that's easy to stop. And after a little while you can't see anything. The sense of sight has stopped. No smell, no taste. The 2 hard ones to stop are hearing and feeling the body. But through this meditation, as I've been explaining, we watch the breath becomes delightful, and all the other feelings in the body disappear. Only the breath left. When the breath becomes very smooth and even, because it's not changing, that disappears too. And with it, your 5 senses are mostly gone. Hearing sometimes comes in, but we live in a quiet place here, so it's not that hard to drop the hearing. And what have you got left? What happens when those 5 senses are taken off? That's when you see your citta, your mind, the emperor, first seen as the nimitta. Straight away, as I mentioned earlier, that's when you understand through your own insight the importance of sila, of keeping precepts, of being kind, of doing service. Because if you've done service that day, your nimitta will be so bright and beautiful. I've been teaching meditation for a long time now, and it becomes very easy for me to predict, because I know most of you very well. Very easy for me to predict who will get beautiful nimittas when they first come up. If you've been pure-hearted, kind, generous, someone who never is out front, sort of pushing themselves forward. Those are people in any society who are always doing the work, always being kind, giving anonymous donations, you don't know who they are. They're just really beautiful people. Those beautiful people, we call them beautiful people, pure-hearted people, because when that nimitta comes up, it's absolutely brilliant, it's beautiful. You've earned that because of all your kindness and generosity. If you've been fault-finding, angry, complaining, the nimitta's not bright. You're just wasting energy. Being kind, being caring, being generous, being forgiving, all those qualities make this light inside your mind just so incredibly beautiful. And that's why, because I know many of you and your conduct and how you behave, you can pretty much predict, when the nimitta first comes up, how beautiful it will be. And it really is worth it, because when that, it's amazing, it just gives you so much bliss and happiness. And you deserve that. But don't worry. All of you who are complaining, fault-finding, angry, who, maybe you keep a precept one day, but maybe not the next day. Middle way, don't go to extremes, they say. That's why often people ask me, say, well, just maybe a little bit of alcohol, is that okay? Just a little bit of wine with your dinner, is that all right? Just a little bit. You don't have to be so extreme to keep it all the precepts all the time. And my answer to them is, well, okay. You can do a little bit of killing, a little bit of stealing, a little bit of adultery, a little bit of lying. Because when they say a little bit, they only use that for the 5th precept. A little bit of any breaking precepts is going to make you sort of suffer. So keep your precepts very good, with kindness, with gentleness, and you find this nimitta is beautiful. You're getting insight into the importance of keeping precepts. Keeping precepts is not to be a goody-goody, so you can make merit points, good karma points to go to heaven after you die. Yeah, that's important too, but you see its result right here, right now, in the power of your mind. And any of you who are superstitious, who are afraid of ghosts and demons or whatever, you keep those 5 precepts, your mind is just so powerful, nothing can attack you. They can't come close to you. No, because that's what ghosts and others, they can see that mind, that's where they contact you. You're powerful, you're pure. No, they just can't do anything with you. You are totally safe. If you understand what this mind is, you understand just its power and the way it protects you. So if you are afraid, you keep those precepts. You get an image that's beautiful. You can go to any cemetery, the spookiest place, and all the ghosts will run a mile from you. They won't run towards you. Ah! Who is this? I'm getting out of here. Now, this is not it is sort of supernatural stuff, but this is actually true. This is how it works. You're totally safe if you keep precepts of a very pure mind. But that's one of the insights you get. But the other insights you start to get when you start to understand what this mind actually is. You also understand just how happy is this mind, how peaceful it is when you're not worried about the past, when you're not worried about the future. Just those little insights. You wonder, why the heck have I spent most of my life dragging up the things of the past? I can't change them, I can't do anything about them, and the way I judge them is really unfair. First of all, I felt quite bad when I went to Cambridge that I came from a poor home. So I couldn't afford as much good clothes as other people could. I had to work hard. Now I look back, that was wonderful. I could, work a bit harder. And that even though my parents weren't rich, they were so loving. It was wonderful that I got raised in a small house, actually an apartment so small. You always had to share with your brother, which meant I had to learn how to get on with him. We had to learn how to love each other. And these days, when everybody has their own room, they don't learn those tricks anymore. They don't learn how to look after each other and love each other. Everyone lives in a big house, each in their own room. I'm really against having big houses these days. Not only is it environmentally bad, but it breaks up families. When you're living in a small place, you learn to get on with one another. You haven't got much choice. So you build up this beautiful sense of family and love and caring for each other. Yeah, you argue, but you have to solve those arguments. There's no place to run. So looking back, I thought how lucky I was to have been born in a poor family. Yeah, we had enough to eat, but we didn't have much. But we really learned how to love one another. And of course, that's why I've got these great memories of my father and my mother. It's very beautiful, because we were poor. So things at first you regret, later on you think, wow, I was so lucky. Those of you who've had cancer, say, oh, I'm so lucky to have had that cancer. As one person said here, I told you about the 200th, 300th person who said that to me. This is actually where you get the insights. You understand that these things, actually, which you thought were not so good, actually were good. So when you look back in the past, it changed your whole attitude to what happened to you in the past. You don't have any anger or guilt or regret anymore. You realize it was all there to make you who you are today. All the painful stuff, the suffering stuff, it was all shit for the mango tree to grow. It was fertilizer for you. Thank you so much. If I didn't have that fertilizer, my mangoes today would not be that sweet. So you have no anger or guilt. Everything is accepted. And you understand just the future. You're making your future. You don't have to be afraid of your future. Make it in the present moment. You know how to make it. So these are simple insights, but my goodness, they change your whole life. When the past and future disappears, you understand what it is. When the body disappears, you understand what this body is. Do you know what the eyes are, what seeing is, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching? We spend so much time trying to get happiness, seeing beautiful things, smelling, tasting delicious food, listening to things you really like. Spend so much time trying to get pleasure in the body and get rid of the pain. But you know what the pain actually is and the pleasure is? Here I come to, again, one of my famous similes. The tadpole simile, which I told in Germany. That's where I learned the name for a tadpole in German, Kohlkuppe. What is it? What's the word for tadpole in Chinese? Meow. Ke-do. Ke-do. Once there was a little ke-do. And she was born in this wonderful lake just outside of Shanghai. Now, let's say in Singapore. And this little tadpole, okay. I'm not going to push my luck. This little tadpole grew up, and she was a very clever girl. She went to school and high school and graduated and went to the best university in the lake, where she learned chemistry. And there she learnt in chemistry that water is H2O. And then also in her spare time she joined the Buddhist Fellowship of the Lake. And one day she heard a monk talk about Abhidharma and the nature of water, and she studied water. But you think the little tadpole could understand what water really was? She knew the theory. She could even translate water into many languages. But how can she understand what water is when she lived all her life in water and knew nothing else but water? no more than a fish could understand what water is. So little tadpole, she thought she could understand water, but she hadn't had the experience yet. But one day, little tadpole, she grew little legs and arms. Things were changing. You know what it's like when you go through puberty, things start to change? But this is for a tadpole. Got legs and arms. And then when they grew, one day, a little tadpole, she was just experimenting, and she jumped. And she was outside of the lake, standing on dry land for the first time in her life. That is weird and spooky. My goodness, she was really afraid. What is this? Imagine what it's like to be a tadpole when you jump out of the lake for the first time. Something's missing. Something which had been there all her life is no longer present. Ah, now that's what water was. That thing which is now gone. And that's the only way a tadpole can understand what water is. To grow into a frog, jump out and leave, and then you realize the water is this thing which is now gone. In the same way, the only way you can understand what your five senses are, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and all the pleasures of those senses, you can live in your body all your life. You can go to Abhidharma classes on the nature of the five senses and pleasure and pain, and all the 17 mind moments which make up one moment of pleasure. And you can go and do neuroscience and work out how that pleasure is, where the different types of pleasure and pain are located in your brain. But can you really ever understand the pain and pleasure of the body and the other senses? Of course you can't, because they're always there. You're surrounded with them, ever since you were born. But one day, all you little tadpoles, you will become frogs. That's what this retreat center is. It's a tadpole hatchery where we make frogs. One day you're sitting there and you grow these wonderful nimittas and you jump out. You're in Jhana land. This is really weird. Nothing like you've ever imagined or experienced before. As you're in the jhana, something's missing. What's missing? Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and your body. Once that's gone, now you understand what those things are. You understand, why have I been so attached and worried about these things? They're nothing. Just like someone who's had near-death experiences. Once they've let the body go and they're outside of the body, they never actually really want to go back into that body again. They realize what it's truly like. Once a person's got outside of prison, they never want to go back inside again. Even if they've been born in prison, lived all their life in prison. Once they're out, wow, this is what it's like to be free. Isn't that great? Who would want to go back again? So sometimes we need to have the experiences of getting out to understand where we've been. In Opening Door of the Heart, one of my favorite stories, the one which actually generated a whole series of books in Indonesia, was the story of the worm in the pile of dung. Once there were two monks, and these two monks were the best of friends. And when they passed away, one of those monks got reborn in the heaven realm, but he missed his best friend. And in your heaven realms, you do have some psychic powers. So he went looking for his best friend. And you know, he went to all the heaven realms, couldn't find any trace of his friend. And he thought, I wonder what happened to him. And then he thought, oh, okay, he's probably been reborn as a human being for a second time. Because that's supposed to be a very fortunate life where you can learn Dhamma and practice Dhamma and become enlightened. It's even better than the heaven realm if you want to practice Dhamma. So he came down to the human realm, looked all over the place, couldn't find his friend anywhere. Oh my goodness, surely he hasn't been reborn as an animal. And he looked around the animal realm, in the jungles and forests. He couldn't find his friend anywhere. He said, this is really weird. Maybe he's done some really bad karma in being reborn as a lower animal. So he looked around to try and look amongst the creepy crawlies. And there, to his shock, he found his friend, who'd been a monk with him, had been reborn as a worm in a pile of cow shit. He said, oh my goodness, what has he done to get reborn in a pile of cow feces? So whatever it was, he said, you can't let your friends down. If you're my friend, I will come and help you, no matter what. So the heavenly being came down in front of that stinking pile of dung and called out to the worm, hey worm, come out, do you remember me? And from out of the big pile of warm dung, this little head poked out. What do you want? Said the worm. He said, we used to be friends before. We were monks together. And the worm said, really? He said, yeah, we were friends before. Now look, worm, I've been reborn in the heaven realm. It's beautiful up there. And you've been reborn in this pile of shit. I'm going to come and help you. I'm going to take you up to heaven. And the worm said, hang on a minute. This heaven, is there any shit up there? Of course not. We don't even say that word up in heaven. We say it down in Jhana Grove because I'm Ajahn Brahm. But we don't even say that word up in heaven. Of course there's no dung in heaven. Heavenly beings don't go to the toilet. They don't need to. They eat heavenly food, so you don't, have to digest it and all that sort of stuff. You don't get stomachache up in heaven. You don't get hay fever. You don't get colds or headaches. No, we don't have that stuff up in heaven. And the worm said, well, if there's no shit in heaven, I'm not going. Because my pile of dung is nice. It's nice and warm. You know what it's like when you first wake up in the morning and it's time for chanting? Do you come to chanting? No, it's nice and warm in my bed. And anyway, my dung, it's my food. You try and get people away from the lunch when it's time to do something. No, I'll finish my food first. No, it's my food, and it's fragrant, and it's warm. It's my home. I like my shit. And so no matter what the heavenly being did to try and get the worm out of the pile of dung, the worm didn't want to go. He couldn't be persuaded. So what did the Deva do, the heavenly being? He tried to pull the worm out. He grabbed hold of the worm and tried to tuck it away. But the worm didn't want to go. So the worm wriggled, and because it was covered with slime, he managed actually to get away from the heavenly being's grasp and go right into the center of the pile of dung. And it's amazing just what a friend would do for somebody else. That heavenly being with this amazing, imagine like a king putting his hand in dung, or a sultan. And this was a heavenly being, much higher. Nevertheless, he put his hand right in the center of that ship to try and find the worm. When he found it, tried to pull it out again. Many times they tried to pull that worm out, but the worm never wanted to go, always struggled and managed to escape. In the end of that story, the heavenly being had to go to heaven and leave the worm in its pile of dung. And I often tell that story. Many of you have been coming on retreats for years. I've been trying to pull you out. You don't want to go. My shit is fragrant and warm. They come to heaven. No. Is there any durian in jhana? No, I'm not going. That's a lovely story. But if you can get the worm to heaven just once, the worm would never go back to the pile of dung. That's why if you get you to jhana just once, then you'll understand what this body is. And you never worry about it again. People die, maybe your mother, your father, your husband, your kid. It's just death, that's all. You won't cry. You won't feel sadness. It's body, that's all. It's no big deal. And also you'll understand. You look after this body without any attachment because you know something else. You know what water is. But that's only the start of insight. Now you find out what your mind is. Because as you go into the deeper meditations, I always like to tell people, if you can get into a second jhana, that is when the frog experiences something else is missing. Something which has always been around you. Something which you've taken for granted to be you. Just like the cup, you've just given it a name and think you've understood it, but you haven't. Because in the second jhana, there's something very strange that's missing. And that is your will. Your ability to choose and do things. It's gone. It's vanished. Do you understand what the will is? It's always there for you, isn't it? You can scratch your nose, you can pull the sleeve of your jumper, you can scratch your chin or your nose again. You did that, didn't you? Who did that? Did you decide to do that? Who decided to come on this retreat? Was it you? What is this thing we call choice and will? No way can you ever understand that. No more than a tadpole can understand what water is. Until the water disappears. You know what the word for disappearing is? It's anicca, viraga, nirodha. There's great words which the Buddha often taught about. They're vanishing and gone. That's where you get insight from. So, in second jhana, your will has gone. Now you can understand what it is. I'm teaching you deep Dharma now. You all think that your will, your choice, is your best friend. You come here not to get rid of your will, but to make it wise and clever, so it won't cause you so much suffering anymore. You come here to train the will, but you'll find you won't train it, you will understand it and realize it has nothing to do with you. None of my business. Now that is shocking you because you can't understand it, but my goodness, when you get into a second jhana or beyond, you will understand what I mean. And no longer will you ever think that you are the one in charge. It's one of the reasons why I can tell bad jokes and never feel guilty about it. Because it's not me. I had no choice. I take no responsibility for it. It's not a self that tells these jokes. It's just jokes, that's all, come out. This is what happens. This is where the deep insights come from your meditation. You have experiences which literally blows your mind, totally different than anything you've experienced before, which shows you all this thinking, contemplating, studying, yeah, it's useful, but not really for deep insight. The only way to get very deep insight, to understand these things, is to become a frog as soon as possible and let these things disappear. When you come back, you realize that what you're attaching to, what you're holding on to, was nothing really worth it. You don't let go from will, you let go of will. And when that disappears, then you're free. That's why this whole path is about letting go, making peace, being kind, being gentle, until the will sort of falls asleep. And when it falls asleep, then you can sneak up to it, find out what it is. You're taking the clothes off the emperor to see what's in there. And you look inside. Hey, there's nothing in it. It's empty. Non-self. No one there. Oh, what a relief. Sometimes people said, Ajahn Brahm, there's nothing, nobody in there, nothing in your ears. And I thought that was, when I was young, when my teacher said that, I thought that was scolding me. Now how I realized how wise my teacher was. So you're empty. And that is a start. I'm going over time, so I can't go any further. I will continue that later on. But this is what insight is all about. So never ever think we don't teach insight here. This is a part of insight. Things vanish and disappear, and when they do, then you understand what they are. Through experience, you let go of the past and future, you feel so free, how wonderful it is. And you can do that, you get the insight. Yes, it's possible, it works, and how wonderful it is. You get insight into what silence is. It's beautiful. Once you understand it, think, why do I think so much? I'm not going to think so much. I'm going to be silent more. You learn how to relax. You get so many insights and understandings from this practice, but mostly you get the deep insights. The nature of your body, of the five senses, of pleasure and pain, of will. It all becomes clear to you. Once you go into the jewel, into the heart of the lotus. It's a jewel of wisdom and a few other things coming soon. Tomorrow, same time, same place.